we're going to do a lubrication video for the PTR91 G3 roller delayed blowback. So let me go ahead and get this thing out onto the table, and I'm going to have it disassembled already. There's plenty of videos about how to disassemble these things, so go there, support those channels and stuff like that, and thank them for their hard work. But anyways, I'm going to have it already disassembled into its main components, and then I'll discuss it from there. So let's go to it. Okay, so I got everything on the table here. So this is basically the whole assembly minus a magazine. So I have the bolt head already somewhat lubricated, but I can always add more lubrication. It's not going to hurt it. More lubricant, the better almost. So anyways, let's start out with the bolt head. It's the most important part of the lubrication process. Now I know a lot of times they'll tell you to wipe it clean or have a light film to not, in order not to catch and attract a lot of fouling. However, this product, EWL30, it's an amazing product. As you can see here, EW30, Slip 2000. So this is a lubricant that kind of acts like a grease. It is pretty thick. It goes on pretty thick, and it stays very thick. So when it heats up, it thins out a little bit, but it's still pretty thick. So anyways, this nice parkerized finish, it kind of looked a little shiny, so a little glittery from shining. But anyways, not to get distracted, but this goes on pretty thick. You can water it down a little bit with EWL. No need to do that with this this rifle or using this anyways. So basically you could grease these parts if you want to, but it's going to make it a pain in the ass to clean, because the reason I want a watery lubricant or a wet lubricant rather than a grease is because it's going to spread around to all the points it needs to cover. So in my opinion, this will splatter all throughout the trunnion, and it'll protect everything from fouling building up. And that way the firing residue that gets shot back into the action can actually get douched out a little bit, and whatever is attracted to this is not going to stick, because this is actually more attracted to the metal and stays to the metal more than being attracted to anything else. Everything else has to tag along with this. It's not attracted to other things except for metal. So anyways, I'm not really the scientist behind it. You can talk to Greg at Slip 2000. He invented this stuff. But anyways, I just add a good amount to the rollers, and you can see it goes on pretty thick, and it takes a little bit to soak in. And then the rollers come out, and you can see it's pretty thick here. So yeah, it's not quite as thick as Vaseline, but pretty thick. And then I go ahead and do these rail guides right here, and yeah, it's pretty thick. It's not really running. And then the other roller, let it go down in there, and this rail channel. So you can also put a little bit down in here where the little locking piece is. Yeah, it's called a locking piece, but it doesn't really lock. And then the other part that you can lubricate is right here where it kind of unlocks from, or releases from, because this is where the claw makes contact with the bolt head, and you can see it's an angled surface, so it doesn't truly lock into place. So anyways, that's what I would do for that. And you can also see these friction points up here. You can also put a little bit of lubricant right here, and I'll just put a little bit and spread it on. It doesn't have too much of a friction problem, but all the way up to here, yeah, it's going to make contact with the charging lever tube, and I just spread it around there a little bit. This makes it incredibly smooth, along with the other lubrication points. So I'm going to set this home. I'm going to put the actual charging handle forward and just drop this in. Don't really need to put it on camera. As I said, there's plenty of videos out there, so go ahead and look around a little bit for yourself, huh? So anyways, that's all done. I would actually also recommend lubing the inside of the bore as well, because the 308 and the pressures, EWL30 works pretty well for that. So next thing I'll do is, you don't need to lubricate this big buffer back here. This is the enhanced buffer. See how long that is? It's pretty good size, and it needs to be, in order to prevent contact with the actual the buttstock, if you will, at least the buttstock plate. So anyways, what I would lubricate is I would start with this polymer tip right here. This is actually a heavy wear component because it's just a little piece of nylon or polymer or whatever. And then I would get a bit in the recoil spring. Not too much, but just enough so when you're racking it back, it actually lubricates it, prevents a lot of tension and rubbing, especially with this part since it is a wear part. And you know, you're pretty much done with that. And then the trigger. So I'll go ahead and take this out. I typically don't need to because I only needed to lubricate it once. However, there is a wear point on here that might help you out a little bit. A lot of people whine about the trigger because they're not very good at shooting to begin with, in my opinion. So if you're whining about a trigger, you need to learn more. See that piece moving right here? Yeah, that's the sear. So when you pull the trigger, it disconnects from there and it goes home. And then when the rifle cycles, you can see it recatches on that. So one thing you can do, you can see PTR already polished this as a kind of a thank you for sending in the gun, giving good maintenance and stuff like that. And there's also a wear point right here. So this is the part that pushes up the ejector to keep it out of the way. As I said, the system's pretty tight. So some things you can do is you can lightly lubricate this. You're not going to really need to do this too much, but you can lubricate the hammer. The hammer's probably going to need more lubrication more often because of the fouling that it's going to see, the firing residue and everything else. And there's also this point right here which encapsulates the or guides the hammer spring down here. So you can also put a little bit in the hammer spring to give it nice smooth function, give it good velocity, etc. and cycling. Smooths out the cycling a little bit. But anyways, as far as lightening up the trigger a little bit, the best you can do is actually put a little bit of lubricant in there, a little wet lubricant between the sear and the actual like trigger piece itself. So yeah, and I also recommend lubricating these little springs. Keeps their friction down. They're pretty tight springs, gives them good longevity. And that's pretty much it. You can do the pivot points, you know, whatever you want. I don't think there's really such thing as enough lubricant for this. Of course, you don't want to just dunk it, but as far as these little components, they see a lot of friction. So I don't think that they can, you know, go and be necessarily too over lubricated. But that's the trigger system. So it's really not that hard, but you know, if there's a friction point on there and if you want this thing to last and not wear too much, I would recommend lubricating this pretty well, this whole system. And you know, you can lubricate the inside of the receiver. You can lubricate the inside of the trunnion as well, where the rollers, you know, are held. That'll help it as well, keep the fouling down, the firing residue buildup down. So anyways, that's how to lubricate the PTR or G3. Not really too complicated. It's just a process that you go through and you take care of it and maintain your weapon. So anyways, I wouldn't let it build up. It doesn't really need to be cleaned all the time, but it helps it with longevity and not stressing out the system too much, just like any other rifle or whatever. So anyways, thanks a lot for watching, and you guys have a good one.